Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really want
to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man
is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
WESN.
Dark clouds hang over Port of Spain. I can't speak for the rest of the country. Good morning. I'm Sean Michael Small. This is Talking Point. And when I say dark clouds, I mean literally. And while I am not necessarily one to have used this narrative, I believe before, usually what I would say is I appreciate overcast skies because it would limit the heat of the sun. I guess in my midlife crisis, I'm more sensitive to that. Of course, some people would say global warming. Sea levels haven't risen though, so maybe it's a bit more complicated than that. I'm hesitant to say that it is that much hotter than before, but it does affect me one way or the other. I appreciate overcast skies, but today I felt, it felt heavier today. It felt heavier today. Now, it felt heavier potentially for a lot of different reasons. One of the things is the ongoing debate in the court of public opinion over the matter of the shooting of Joshua Samaru and Kaya Sealy. One dead, one paralyzed, and one, I guess, viewed as a victim, maybe not, and then the other viewed as a perpetrator, maybe not, depending on who you speak to, because one has been charged, not just paralyzed. The father of the deceased has apparently gone on the record and switched his stance. His opinion changed after speaking to the family's attorney with regards to what the charges meant against Ms. Sealy. And the thing about it is, while I do find this situation to be shocking in a way, that's on some level how it was presented. Literally, headline is shocking reversal. It doesn't really change my stance on the matter one bit. Because I understand he's going to interpret the charges a certain way, and of course his son is his main priority, justice for his son. And he's not necessarily going to be stuck on a narrative. And I could appreciate the fact that he's willing to change his mind based on new information. Because just about everything I said last week, Friday, was based on the fact that assumes that the charges are legitimate enough. That assumes that there potentially was a gun, even though this is the one case that there was apparently a gun and the police decided, oh no, we can't show the public the gun. We can't talk about the gun. We can't show the public the gun. No, we need to keep everything under wraps. This is one time. Because a lot of it is with regards to decisions like that, how to lose any court of public opinion, regardless of what the facts of the matter may or may not be. And this whole situation, I think there is a headline today with regards to people marching and protesting over the matter. And we are back to where we were at the beginning on this issue, where the police are warning against people from marching and protesting against the police without permission, and they have to apply to the Commissioner of Police for permission to march against the Commissioner of Police to call for his removal. Now, here's the thing. The one mistake that they're making is that regardless of whether they want to march or not, they should go through the formal process. If they are allowed to protest, they protest as usual. And if they are denied, well, I am not advocating that they break the law. But if you want to stand up for something in spite of the law, you have to be prepared to face the consequences to do so. However, you will get a lot more ammunition when the Commissioner of Police, because again, maybe he does. Maybe he does, and then you go on as usual. And if he doesn't, then you could say, well, he is covering his own you-know-what in light of the events. Because this whole situation here, I'm trying to get the, I want to get that article specifically. We're in a situation where, right, Guevara and Alexander must go. That's the sentiment, and I understand that, because the people that made the public relations mistakes are those two. And you might question, how can I say that they made public relations mistakes? Well, let's put it this way. People are extremely upset over Kayasili being charged. It doesn't matter if the charges are justifiable or not. That's point number one. Point number two, charges does not mean conviction. Charges just means, well, we can charge because we have enough evidence to reasonably suspect you are culpable. But we haven't proven in a court of law yet, just with charges, that you are culpable. So, but the narrative has gone completely out of control. And that is due to the fault of the Commissioner of Police and the Minister of Homeland Security. Because they don't understand what to say and what not to say. And ironically, the things that they should have said, they didn't say. And the things that they should not have said, they opened their mouths. And were very unapologetic with what I would argue to be their nonsense. Now, the thing about it is, though, calling for them to be removed, I understand it. I can't fault the protesters for saying it. And I can't necessarily say that it might not be warranted, particularly in case of the Commissioner of Police, because I have no reason, and I said this last week, I have no reason to think that the TTPS at this point, now that they have been led to this point in the narrative, where trust and confidence was extremely low before, and it's somehow managed to bottom out even lower. But a good chunk of that is centered around the Commissioner of Police himself. Can the image of the service be rehabilitated? Can the image of the police service be rehabilitated from what I called the service months ago? Where people look at situations where accusations of extrajudicial killing occurred, but not necessarily were followed up with any sort of convictions. I don't think the public necessarily forgives and forgets those situations, changes their minds on those situations regardless. And a lot of your reputational damage happened before the current commissioner, but he waded in head first, basically like an amateur, and now has put himself in a position where I don't think public perception of him can reasonably turn around. And he's there, theoretically, for like the next 10 years. If you hire old and they're great, you regret the fact that they have to retire soon. If you hire young and they're great, great, best case scenario. But if you make the wrong decision, you have a problem on your hands with regards to trying to correct it. But here's the thing. Some of it is the commissioner's fault. Some of it is the Minister of Homeland Security's fault, but it doesn't end with them. Right? Now there's reasons why this situation is a mess and will continue to be messy. The DPP's charges are not the be-all and end-all, the final verdict of the whole situation, right? There might be enough evidence to suggest charging Kaya Seeley with whatever she was charged with, right? The list of charges, 3 counts of attempted manslaughter, well, manslaughter and attempted murder, or whatever the charges were, right? That's fine. That is not the be-all and the end-all of the scenario. Her case is her case. Technically speaking, nothing was said that the officers might not be held responsible for some aspect or another of it. We don't know. Or at this point, anything along those lines will probably be seen as political now, regardless of whether it's the right thing to do. Charging Kaya Seeley may or may not be the right thing to do, but because the narrative was so poorly handled from the beginning, the court of public opinion is taken off like a runaway train, and neither the commissioner nor the Minister of Homeland Security are fast enough runners to catch this thing. But it is not totally only their fault, because at the end of the day, someone put them there. Now, you might have had confidence that the commissioner should be able to handle it, right, based on his public speaking so far. Don't mind the fact that the challenges that he may have faced probably don't compare to this situation. Although one should have probably wondered to what extent his limited policing experience might be a detriment. Because maybe for different reasons than the rest of you, him wearing that Punisher patch to me is a ridiculously bad sign. And on some level, looks ridiculous, right? I guess he thinks it looks cool, but we're not in secondary school anymore, Toto. So, maybe the commissioner might be able to handle it. But I don't know if there's this misguided thing about, oh, we have to show that he's independent. Let him sink himself and also potentially the entire perception of the criminal justice system, which we technically are supposed to be better at managing than the PNM. But hey, you know, we need to prove that he's independent. Don't mind how we selected him, so the political perception around his appointment, it's only going to be so much you can insulate him from, right? Also, you're letting the Minister of Homeland Security be attached to the hip with the Commissioner of Police, like if they pitched marbles back in the day. Maybe they did, right? But here's the thing about the Minister of Homeland Security. Everybody knew Everybody knew if there was one person in all of cabinet that did not have the prerequisite experience to deal with certain public relations challenges, because he is no longer a field officer that only speaks for himself. He's not even just a representative of the TTPS. He is also a representative of the entire government of Trinidad and Tobago. Nobody thought, hey, maybe we need to help him deal with highly controversial issues that are complex in nature when it comes to dealing with the emotions of the public. Because it's not as though the police, senior officers, the executive as a whole have a great track record when dealing with the public. So on some level, as much as you could criticize the Minister of Homeland Security and you could give him his fair share of blame, I have a little bit of pity for the man because he was basically put in a position to fail. His skill set is not public speaking. And if there was any doubt, you had, I don't know, something like 9 months before the shooting occurred to show you that his experience as a politician is limited. So why did, heaven help me, the rest of cabinet think it's a good idea to leave him and the commissioner to communicate on such a critical, controversial, and contentious issue as this on their own? Nah, we can't help you. Now, there's a part of me that thinks that's typical, because it's not as though they have any bright-minded people when it comes to public relations in cabinet anyway. But in theory, there should at least be one of them that might have been able to have a better idea, because this reflects badly on cabinet. This whole situation is theoretically unnecessary. Now that they're not just calling for the police commissioner to be fired, and you might want to say that it's a minority and it's bad actors and it's people who don't know any better. Listen, these things have legs. Why do you think the PRM felt so secure for 10 years? Because at first it was only haters, and maybe that's true. But eventually, the bad press, the bad sentiment, the bad perception, it stacks up. People don't forget the bad times. Their tolerance level just wears out. And then once it's gone, once they are no longer tolerant of the situation, they're going to backtrack. And they're going to say, remember when? These things will not go away. They are part of the public record forever. They're part of your legacy forever. And it wears away at the tolerance of the people who are not diehard supporters. Tolerance that is needed for acceptance in other situations, like the lack of FUL's policy. Anyway, let me hit brakes there. There's other news in the morning. There's an aspect of this case that still makes the situation relatively bad enough that it undermines, makes the Commissioner and Minister of Homeland Security's perceived defense. I say perceived because it might not have been their motivation. They might think they're trying to be objective. It's not coming across that way. Perceived defense of the situations, of the shooting, and of the officers involved. Before I get into that, there's a couple other things I want to get to first. First of all, just with regards to cabinet and the whole political promises and all of that nonsense, it's very interesting how this PSA nonsense has played out, because now they have rejected the best and final offer to settle outstanding public sector arrears. Anyway, y'all want to make deals? Make them deals. You feel betrayed? Sucks to be you. Because I'm fairly certain most economists didn't think this was a good idea before the election. I could be wrong. But the whole thing about, well, they didn't know, there's a difference between not knowing in detail and being completely oblivious to the general economic condition of the country. The signs were there. You just refused to acknowledge them until it was too late. And now you made a political deal that you can't really follow through with fully. Promises made, promises unkept. Now, Parliament walked out, the opposition walked out of Parliament last Friday because now this is a catch-22. The government seemingly made moves to potentially end a debate, and this is the Victims' Rights Bill. Seemingly moved in a manner that suggested they were going to end the debate prematurely before a member of the opposition was able to speak, which again is incredible because there are less opposition members than members on the government side. That's including, of course, if you take out the 2 Tobago MPs who sit on that side. So for the life of me, I don't understand why is it that they repeatedly want to make debates shorter before the opposition fully has a chance to speak. At least before they had a better excuse, right? Or the scenario, it was easier to try to pull a fast one on us. Now, the thing is, it's not necessarily, I don't know to what extent it was guaranteed that they were going to wind up debate early before MP Kareem Marcel could have spoken. But the opposition walked out on it. I understand why. This is the de-evolution of the political relationship. It is ridiculous. There's a part of me that does want to scold the opposition, saying maybe you were premature, you should have let the government prove to be an actor in bad faith, not just assume that they were. But I understand why. It's not as though we've seen levels of sophistication to the current government, particularly when it comes to their parliamentary strategy. It is rather sad, to be honest, the kind of silly games, childish games that is being played in Parliament, right? The only question, it's not whether the government is being childish with regards to how they do the business of legislative debate. The only question is the opposition going too far in response and is being just as silly? That's really the only question I have. That potential answer could be yes. It could be yes. But I'm not necessarily willing to state it is a definitive yes right now. With the government, with these silly games, it's pathetic and sad. If this is what you need to do in order to effectively manage the country, then you are nothing but substitute teachers and you're not ready yet. I don't know how else to put it, because I don't understand why is this nonsense necessary. But again, people would like to think that their legacy is just building a hospital and we'll, you know, put your face on a sticker or on a $1 note, or I don't know what, and bam, legacy. Nah, I don't think so. Just ask former Prime Minister Pandey with regards to the airport. Just ask former Prime Minister Manning with all the construction projects that he initiated, some of which was highly successful. Just ask the previous administration with an airport in Tobago. It don't just work so. It don't. Anyway, we'll take a break after this. The last thing I want to mention, of course, is the situation in Tobago. People are calling for peace, right? They don't want to see any sort of violence stem from this issue. The stepfather has been charged with the child's murder. There are questions about the potential other suspects, although if he said he did it, this always brings the question of, is he taking on blame in order to shield the real culprit? I don't know. The thing is, of course, the potential motive, right, that has been assumed or speculated upon by Joe Public, all of us in the public. It's not as though that is completely unheard of or out of left field. Not necessarily the actual 100% motive for potentially murdering the poor boy, but rather the emotions that could lead to that, right? So it's just that the response to those emotions, if that is the full truth, is way too extreme. But anyway, there are calls for peace, right? Let us not allow our own selfish thing to cause us to create crime and continue the cycle. It has to end here. Here's the thing. The one thing I want to push back against this is not that it shouldn't be peace. There should be peace. You can't try to solve violence with violence in matters like this. Self-defense is a different thing. But if you push people's emotions down, if you're not careful and you basically encourage people to let it go and to move on, and I'm not saying that's what they're doing, but on some level indirectly that might happen. This is how we get people to then not be emotionally invested and involved and engaged and actively participating in important matters like this. I don't want to see anyone commit violence over the situation, but I have no issue with people being angry and expressing that anger as long as they do so responsibly. I much rather that than a population who doesn't care, who is indifferent to these situations, right? I much rather that, because we have seen far too much bloodshed going on for far too long, and the wider population, for the most part, not by their words, but by their deeds, seemingly are indifferent. I don't know if it's because they're shell-shocked, I don't know what it is, but the public needs to be able to voice their concerns in a responsible yet strong manner that cannot be denied. Otherwise, we are being complacent, and these things are bound to be repeated and never be fixed. Never be fixed. So the sentiment behind these things, it's very tricky. And that's part of the reason why what the commissioner did in the last week or so, or the last few days, last week, late last week, was so foolish. Encouraging people, whether he realized it or not, to stop cooperating with the police. Or you gave us too much information last time. There were too many wild goose chases. We couldn't deal with it. All right. You wanted help, we helping. Now that we helping, you're complaining. Why should we help? I mean, that alone is one example of not understanding public relations. Now, in this case, it's well-meaning people who understand, at least in Tobago, the violence is begotten because of reprisals. They just want peace. I can appreciate that. But they should also, or maybe it's for the rest of us, encourage people, be peaceful, but do not return to peace. Do not let this situation die down. Because I fear it happened once, it could happen again, and it could happen a lot more frequently than you might think. But that is assuming certain things. The case, hopefully, the full and final truth will come out. That, however, the question would be is how long that will take. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I'll get into further arguments into this whole police shooting thing of Joshua Samaru and the questions that's still hanging that the commissioner and minister have not even acknowledged. And it makes you wonder, you know, to what extent are they really just running defense, and to what extent do they just not know how to talk about this issue? We'll be right back after this.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios. But they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title, it's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
Are you driven, ambitious, and ready to earn? WESN, the Content Capital, is expanding, and we're looking for dynamic media sales executives to join our team. Sell powerful advertising solutions across television, digital, and social media platforms, and help brands tell their story. If you have strong communication skills, a passion for sales, and the drive to succeed, join WESN today. Send your CV to marketing@wsncc.com or WhatsApp 6861662 and start building your future.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
In this day of stay-at-home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins real estate agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We help you find that rental to rest along the way or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too, call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
I'm back here and talking about WESN. And this situation, the communication, the narrative was mismanaged, I would argue, by the authorities. One of the issues is the commissioner came out when the shooting happened. He gave a version of events, whether it was correct for him to do so. It technically, and you know, he wasn't necessarily speaking as someone with computer level of accuracy and knowledge on the situation, right? One could say, yeah, oh, it was a minor mistake. The problem was in the context of the whole situation. You can't be making these mistakes. So he made, he gave a version of events that technically was shown to potentially at least not be true with regards to the videotape, right? And then it snowballed from there because he made his statements, I believe, something along the lines of the Tuesday, the video came out on Thursday. To the public, it looked as though the version of events the commissioner gave us was not true. Now, if they presented the gun, that might have helped the situation, but they didn't. We don't know why. There was very little with regards to an official narrative on what happened to try to explain the situation to the public. Usually, they hide, yes, they hide behind the whole thing about, well, it's an active investigation, we can't talk about it. No, you hide because you don't know what to say and you don't want to say anything most of the time, right? I wouldn't say all of the time, sometimes that's pertinent, but there's technically not been an official narrative past that. Now, what you get officially from the authorities is, we can't talk about it, we ought to be responsible, don't speculate, blah, 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 you ought to be fair, blah, 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 my officers need counseling, blah, 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 blah. So the narrative was a mess. That counseling line was not, oh my gosh, this is so bad, how do they deserve counseling? No, that counseling line was literally, that was a microcosm of how not to communicate things to the public and not piss the public off. It was a rather how to communicate things to the public that will piss them off, make them upset, make them angry at you. But no one ever accused the Commissioner of Police of knowing what he's doing. Just saying. So, but there's another aspect to the situation, one that potentially came out, and I know that there's a lot of people speculating on the forensics analysis of the video. The bullet, where the bullet went, who shot what angle, and the blah, blah, blah with regards to where the smoke came from. Forget about that. There's only one thing from that video I think that you could argue has some degree of pertinence, but even then it's still subjective. But I believe that there are enough people who view it a certain way. Case in point, this voice note was sent us over the weekend, right? And I believe this is just merely expressing a sentiment that is common enough in the public that it would be foolhardy for anybody to ignore. We're not going to ignore it because I agree with it. I think it's valid. It's not necessarily be all and end all. But listen to this. Tell me what you think if you agree.
Pleasant good morning. Based on the program I had this morning and the video concerning the shooting with Mr. Samaru, all I can say is I find these police and officers and them look like they enjoy what it is they was doing. Because if there was on that threat, I ain't seen nobody try to shield themselves, went behind anything to protect themselves from bullets. Nothing like that. Everybody engaged by walking towards the vehicle unprotected, shooting behind the vehicle. That is all I had to say. So it didn't look like there was under no threat. It more looked like they was enjoying what they was doing. It didn't get time to figure out if the person, if they say the woman was shooting, if it was a handgun, if it was a machine gun. So at the end of the day, the vehicle they was trying to disperse, right? So I don't see where a police chase could even be taking place with, because at the end of the day, if a child was turning the corner on that road, the child and all would be dead on the road with a bicycle, whether walking or what. And a sense they could have chasing a more proper police chase, you know, call for more backup, something like that to block off the vehicle. It didn't have to end up this way, just saying.
Now, I wouldn't necessarily agree with part where he says it seems like they enjoyed it. I understand why he would say that. I mean, I kind of understand. I can't say I fully understand. I don't know who the speaker is. I don't know fully what he's thinking. But I kind of understand why he would say that. The thing about this scenario, right, and you could find the original, but the thing about the scenario that has been shown by this video, and I believe this is one of the first initial questions that a lot of people had, and it was kind of maybe sidetracked with regards to just the sheer image of seeing Joshua Samaru hands up and police opening fire, right? Now, the argument is we don't know what caused them to open fire, because it does look like it can be perceived, it looks like, I'm not saying it is an execution. However, the thing about it that made it somewhat strange, and I believe this is what the voice note, the member of the public was getting at, it's the aggressive posture and positioning of the police, where it looked as though they were running to engage, not running to arrest, not running to cause, running to engage, running out of cover, running from behind their vehicle, running out in the open, and looking potentially, it's almost difficult to look at the video and not say on some level, was this a predetermined situation? Were they looking for a fight? Just because of how quickly it went from not shooting to shooting. They barely got out of the vehicle when the bullets started flying, right? And again, why is it that, and this is just my question, this is not the be-all and end-all, this doesn't prove anything, but why is it that if apparently Miss Seeley was the threat, that the officers seemingly are trying to get better, I don't know, angles to engage Mr. Samaru? More importantly, couldn't you have attempted to wait behind cover where you're safe to let that other civilian car drive away before you decide to go guns blazing in like Rambo? Because that's somewhat it looked like. It looked like a commando raid, not a police interdiction. Which, and again, they can't say why they wanted to stop and question them. They couldn't necessarily tell us that Miss Seeley had a gun and it was being brandished in whatever way to potentially justify shooting at her. There were so many things that they just didn't tell us that it was ridiculous. And even with the charges against Kaya Seeley, the big question I have is, could any police officer tell me, with regards to how these officers moved, was this correct police procedure? Was this sound police procedure? Did this look like the actions of police officers who are meant to engage on that level, or does this look like something else? And that is the problem I believe that members of the public has. The situation looks a certain way, and it's difficult for the public to come to terms with it, to figure out a justifiable reason for it. The level of aggression. What were they doing to say that you are going to actively hunt them, engage in such a manner, right? What was the mindset of the officers? It's not like the commissioner came out and said, based on standard operating procedure X, Y, and Z, this is why their posture was justified, their movements were justified, their decisions were justified, etc., etc. Because the caller had a very pertinent concern if there were children. From what I understood, one of these neighbors' houses, I could be wrong, I could be mixing up the shootings, but one of these neighbors' houses had people in it. And it might have been young children. Right? Again, what is this moving forward out of cover, right? And look, with regards to one of those officers, he's crossing in front of a civilian car. Because let's assume that they are still genuine police officers and there's no conspiracy theory motivation to what they're doing, right? They're just cops. Let's assume that you're now in a gunfight. Now you force yourself in a position where you have to overwhelmingly suppress the danger because behind you is a civilian car. Right in the middle of your formation is a civilian vehicle with at least a civilian driver. And who knows who else is around with regards to members of the public, pedestrians, homeowners, what have you. The thing is, given the firepower that they had, from what the one report I saw with regards to the gun was that it was a revolver, given the firepower they have so many advantages. They have the longer range, more accurate weapons. They are behind a car that has crashed into a ditch and can't move. So they don't need to aggressively do anything to cut them off, to inhibit their movement. They are stuck in a vehicle where their movement is already inhibited. And more importantly, if they literally just waited 5 seconds, the one occupant of the vehicle that has access to a door that he could open freely to try and run, he's already hands up. Part of the reason why they might have felt that their lives were threatened was because they were so exposed. They don't need to get closer for their rifles to be any more effective. A car body, the trunk, windscreens, windows, doors are not stopping 5.56 ammunition. Don't let Hollywood fool you. The engine block is in front of the two alleged suspects in this scenario. That's the only real piece of cover they have from rifle ammunition. They could turn that car into Swiss cheese with the weapons they're carrying. They could do that from behind their car, from behind their engine block, from behind cover, without exposing themselves, allowing them to not have to escalate the situation. So again, where is the police procedure in all of this? Now, don't take my word for it. First of all, you have a former commissioner of police. To be fair, he has contested the last election. He has ventured further into politics than he did when he was commissioner of police. One could argue that he was still obviously a political operator before commissioner of police. To what extent he turns that off while commissioner of police. He did a reasonably good job of supporting the government without necessarily being their servant, by the way. This is the PNM administration. He did a reasonable job. Also, not undermining the Prime Minister directly with what he said. I actually was quite impressed with how he handled himself in the role, not necessarily with regards to everything during the time, but within the role. Now, you have the first wave movement basically demanding that the charges be dropped. That's interesting, right? And again, here's the thing. The one issue is we need to maybe understand, and perhaps this is idealistic, so there is some degree of compromise I should make for this, for people with this sentiment. Charges does not mean conviction. Charges don't mean conviction. I'm not sure if the commissioner of police realizes, however, that he has put the service in a no-win scenario. Because if they convict Kaya Sealy, enough people will not believe it that they'll hate the criminal justice system. And if they fail to convict Kaya Sealy of anything, he will look like a complete moron to more people than just me. Good luck with that, sir. But you have one political group that's basically saying this is a travesty of justice. That's what they said. And Gary Griffith, he has questioned the police service, former commissioner of police, who is also former minister of national security / national security advisor. He has enough experience in these things where he's not someone that is devoid of pertinent experience. Yes, his background is technically not policing. But he has a lot of questions, right? One, of course, is if gunshot residue tests were done, I assume on Sealy's hands. And what other evidence might they have? And this again goes back down to the police need to stop quit hiding against this whole active investigation argument, right? Yes, I understand you can't talk about it in its entirety, but there should be some things that could be revealed. Because the whole thing about, oh, we need to be careful with this case before it turns into a mess, congratulations, you turned it into a mess. But Griffith brings up a good point. I don't know if this is the case where they're trying to be too smart, or we need to gather the evidence, give it to the DPP, let him make the decision. If she did something like have a gun, why wasn't she charged? Is it because you didn't know what to do due to public sentiment and you feared angering people unnecessarily? So now your bright, grand strategy is to let her go free, uncharged, for months, and then have to come back now and charge all over again. That don't really look great to the public, just so you know. I don't know if you know, I don't know if you noticed, but people find that looks funny, regardless of how proper it may or may not be, regardless of how legal it may or may not be. And in fact, and this is one of the things, if there's a disconnect between people's perception and what reality is, you know, one of the responsibilities of a leader in this scenario is to literally explain it to them. Figure out a way to say, look, we understand the public has these concerns and has these perceptions, but the reality is, in cases like this, blah, 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 blah. Yes, you're going to take some lumps making those statements. Those are the lumps you have to take. You have to at least try. You need to combat what you want to say is bad information or speculation with good information. But, you know, in the infinite wisdom of our leaders, we rather get ponged by the public and then blame the public for ponging us because we don't know how to manage the situation. Well, whose fault is that? It's not the public's fault. You were chosen. Here's the thing. Why is it that when you can't do your job, you want to blame the public? The public wasn't selected to be Commissioner of Police. The public wasn't selected to be Minister of Homeland Security. The public wasn't selected to lead the government. You were selected. The implication is you were selected because you can do the job. Why does the public have to do the job for you? The public doesn't have the responsibility of leading itself. The public has the responsibility of trying to be as responsible as it can. But when there are situations where obviously it is outside the realm of knowledge of the general public, there is some level of responsibility by leadership to figure out a way to explain it. It's not that hard. When it comes down to it, certain basic things seemingly is so beyond conceptually. People in high office, are you really qualified to be in high office? If you want to be a mundane human that has mundane human limitations, maybe you should have limited yourself to mundane, average, ordinary office, not no high office. The problem is most people that hold higher office, they're not there to actually serve. They're not there to actually make your life better. They make your life better as a side effect of advancing their agenda. Because they know, well, we have to please the people some of the time. We have to please them enough that they're not vexed all of the time. Because it's holding the office, it's the paycheck and the privilege, the power, the authority, the pampering, all of the staff and the drivers, and in some cases, the security that they were supposed to have gotten rid of. And then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, there's a threat against the government. I mean, look, just recently, some Belmont gangster did one thing to cause all MPs apparently to be under threat. Heavens, Betsy. Probably he ranted on a phone or some nonsense like that. I have no idea, right? It's not as though we saw anything. We don't want to say anything, yes, but I find it ridiculous. One gangster in Belmont is literally going to allegedly cause the entire National Security Council to be like, oh my gosh, we're in trouble. He might, I don't know, review bomb us. So, I really don't know what to say about this issue with regards to, like, I feel as though I am not selling just how bad, I am underselling. Everything that I've said is probably underselling just how bad of a public relations faux pas this entire thing was. It's a complete unforced error. The PNM has nothing to do with this. Nothing. Because it doesn't, my issue is not what the officers did. The voice note, the caller, the viewer, he has an issue with what the officers did. Okay, I do have an issue with it, but that's not my main point. My main point is independent of that. My main point was how this whole situation was managed, right? Not being able to explain anything to the public in any meaningful way. We got explanations. They were a pack of nonsense. That's what they were. No one is riding with that. Yes, I understand. There are people who are hung up on, well, why did they run? Why did they run? I don't know. Why do people get shot and killed by the police? And then the police end up getting charged. And even when they are deemed innocent, members of the public find it difficult to accept. I don't know. Why is the police trust and confidence so low? Like, think about it, right? Is anyone going to tell me that you're going to trust every and anything that the police does? So then why are we going to question, well, why did they run? So what if they ran? Running is not a crime that is deserving of the death penalty. Where's that in the law? Someone tell me. So yes, there are people who were willing to go with that, which on some level, I can't remember to what extent the official, which is not a real narrative, but the official utterances pushed that part of it. But any day, mostly what the government or the limited members of the government have been saying about this issue has not been accepted by a significant portion of the general public, a significant enough portion of the general public. And I would argue for those that are trying to still give the commissioner, the minister, and the police service the benefit of the doubt, they're not looking at you with rose-colored glasses and stars in their eyes. There's some level of suspicion and doubt. There has to be some. Now, how far that goes, that's subjective. But you're not going to have the capital to survive the next controversy. Because for any public office holder, there's bound to be a situation where it's going to be so hard to explain, there's no good explanation. And maybe this is what it was, and if that's the case, but still, you kind of walked into the nonsense that you said, right? I'm talking about these situations where you know even at your best, it's very difficult to appease the public. So you just have to take your lumps. That's when you need the goodwill to spend, not on situations where you say nonsense and make a bad situation worse. And then, of course, there's the fact that, because I acutely remember over the weekend when I saw this video, right? Because it was literally a week after The story was big, but then it really blew up a week after when people had a whole weekend to mull over this video. And my thing was, I was waiting for anybody in high office from the government side to talk, or even the opposition, but that's less important. Somewhat disappointing in a way, but less important. And I heard nada for days. For days, you didn't hear from the commissioner or the minister or anybody else in cabinet, particularly Prime Minister. Why? It's very telling. It's very telling. Political survival was more important than dealing with this public relations nightmare that is partially of their own making. It's very telling where the priorities of leadership in this country lay. How many people did not want to touch this with a 10-foot pole, except social media commenters and members of the media. Dare I say that it is from those corners of society where we get various pockets of semi-reluctant leadership. Because it's not the media's job to be the leaders of the country. It's mainly a check against the government. It's mainly a check to speak to power and all of those wonderful buzzwords, what have you. Not to be the de facto leaders of the country. But that is slowly what this situation is turning into. At a time when the media is slowly dying out. 2 media houses, 2 newsrooms. Now there was a report late last week that one of our daily newspapers is going to lay off reporters or lay off staff. At a time when we can't get proper leadership from our politicians, where do we get it from? We get it from the media, which is not the correct place, which could only do so much, which could only be so effective, but when the media also is shrinking, what is there left? Because the politicians are too busy playing political games and to actually deal with the situations that matter to the public. So I don't want to hear none about no crime down nonsense. If crime is so down and things are so peaceful, why did that have to happen? Why did police officers feel as though this is knee-deep in Miami Vice and that is an appropriate response to whatever it is they saw or did not see? We don't know because there were no body cameras. Another area where the government has lost the boat, jumped the shark, and has no real defense to its critics. None. None whatsoever. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my read on the situation is entirely wrong. But here's the unfortunate reality of the situation. It only got worse. It only got worse between now and when this happened late January. Economy only got worse. Relationship with the PSA seemingly is only getting worse. Prices of goods and services that are key to the cost of living only getting worse. Liquidity circulation in the economy, I am guessing on this one, but I would guess it got worse. We should be getting ASP Arun today, but we do have a caller from Arima. We'll take this call first. Arima, good morning. Mute your TV, caller.
Hi, good morning, Sean.
Morning, morning.
Take it easy, take it easy. Yes, you know, we had to keep the sun burner. We had to keep it in front with this little child. We had to keep it with this little 2-year-old child. We have to keep the front burner in front. And the officers and them, they tell you when you see something, say something, but yet, you see what happened there. You see what happened to Samaru. You understand? So what else you could say again? When you see it, you see it in person, you see it on the video, you see it on TV, but yet still, what again you will do? Is a set of corruption and corrupted going on in this country. We just have to call on the Lord, but there is so much the Lord could do. But you know what? I want the little baby it's just a little baby. I just praying and hoping that they will still find the little body and bring the person they said they had murdered him, but I still would like the child body to be found. You understand? That is all I praying for that. Now, I was wondering, I sat down and I was wondering, I wonder if they check the outhouse. I wonder if they check the outhouse toilet outside, boy. I sit down and I studying that. Oh, God, only look for the child all over. Look for him all over. We need to know that we found him so it will give us a little peace of mind. Or you don't give up on him, it's just a baby. Look for him, please. Oh God, don't stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Cora. It goes back to the situation with the person who was missing from the oil rig. With regards to the sea, that's what makes it difficult as time goes on. And now you're speaking about a smaller body. So there's a lot of bad things that could happen to a body at sea. And I don't know if the specific body chemistry of a 2-year-old is different enough, because there is differences, right, with bone structure and muscle tissue and stuff like that. And what I might mean with regards to decomposition, floating, and predation, scavengers, and I really don't want to go into it because it's just unpleasant to talk and think about. But yes, if the body was, for lack of a way to put it, throw it into the sea, it makes it very difficult because you can't say for certain what will happen. It could wash up on shore, it might be lost to the sea, to the currents, depending on where it was thrown, and there's a whole host of complex factors that just, I understand. I don't think, and this is obviously it won't bring him back, right? But it's really devastating when you go that step further to say, and also his body is lost and will not be recovered potentially. A 2-year-old. Like, why does this all have to happen to a 2-year-old? And if this could happen in this society, is everything okay? Is everything going okay? Crime is down, by the way. We have Dabadi on the line, I think. Dabadi, good morning, you're on the air.
It's Sean, morning.
Morning.
Pleasant morning. Listening to the conversation and all fingers pointing at the police now. They do the wrong, they don't the wrong. But with respect to law and order, I want to that protest yesterday is a clear indication of lawless Trinidadians, and from time to time we would have seen protests that were peaceful and that kind of thing. That nobody besides the DPP and the police has that amount of evidence and the full information. We are just coming to conclusions with that little 5-10 second clipping that we saw.
Mm-hmm.
And there's more to it than there's almost 15 minutes of things that we don't know what actually happened. We don't know what happened in the chase, while it's going along the chase. The police did not see it fit. Well, they had nobody cam to even take out a cell phone and do a recording or something. But I really hope that this doesn't escalate into something serious in this country, because we are moving on our emotions right now, and emotions really doesn't solve the problem. So I really wish that the case can be called quickly, and the prosecution lay their case, so therefore we would have a clear idea as to what the DPP really bases his conclusion to his final decision to charge who he said should be charged. So wonderful program as usual. You have a nice day, and I'm locked on and listening. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, caller. And you know what you said there, and maybe I didn't speak too much to this aspect of it, but it's really sad because on some level, the police service is having to take public criticisms when I would argue the police service is not the culprit here. What the officers did or didn't do in this situation, that could be discussed, debated, adjudicated, what have you. They don't represent, they represent the service, but they don't represent the entire service, you know. But more importantly, I believe that the bulk of the blame for why this has turned into a public relations circus is with regards to how the public communications were handled, what statements were made, what stances were presented to the public by the commissioner and the minister, both on with regards to the shooting, as well as anything linked to it, like the issue of body cameras. Because body cameras came up because of this situation, both when it happened and recently. Because the whole thing about body armor versus body cameras and how that played out, regardless of the intentions, you cannot judge other people by their intentions. You judge them by their actions, by their decisions that you could see, by the statements that you could hear, by their body language that they will display. Whatever their intentions are, that's to other people, that's up in the air. So there was a whole scenario where the commissioner and the minister seemed more concerned about the public seeing the video as opposed to trying to actually deal with the issue of the public being upset because it looked as though police executed a man with his hands up trying to surrender. And they didn't treat with it properly. They were more playing defense, not too dissimilar to some of the politicians from the previous administration, where you're not speaking to the issue, you're trying to deflect, you're trying to hijack the conversation on what you think is personal, and that is to say the minister, more so in this case than the commissioner, but also to some degree the commissioner. So the narrative, and I had it in quotations as the topic because it wasn't really an official narrative that was crafted and they tried to sell it as a coherent narrative. It was more just the perceived amalgamation of whatever it is they told us on the various issues and tangential issues on the matter. It was poor, and it left the population in this state where their perception is more or less going down this runaway train. And to be honest, I'm not necessarily saying that the public perception is correct. I'm saying it's understandable. And what are we going to do about it? All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we have our media ambassador. It is good to hear from him, good to see him in relative good health, and we'll talk to him soon, but just after this. Stay tuned.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
In this day of stay at home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent, or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins real estate agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We help you find that rental to rest along the way or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too, call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, WESN Content Capital.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
I'm back here talking about it, and it is with great pleasure, right? Yes, I understand what I've been talking about for the whole show. Please, let's not mix, business and pleasure just yet. It is with great pleasure that I welcome back our media ambassador, Acting SP Christopher Arun, to Talking Point. We missed you all of last week, but it's good to see you this week.
Yeah, good day, Sean. Good day to you and your viewers. Good day to your staff. Well, thanks for having me back. It was a challenging week last week, of course. So I'm glad to be back. And I don't know what you were talking about before, though.
Well, I was talking about the PR aspect of the situation. You don't need to hear about all that. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, right? But you do bring up a pertinent topic with regards to, forgive me, members of the public, if you don't agree with this, but I think it's very pertinent of a topic for the media ambassadors to bring to the situation. They can't speak to what the commissioner does, and they can't speak to the investigation. They can't speak to the officers, at least not without authorization. But one of the aspects of the case, and I did bring it up earlier, but I didn't go deep into it, is the fact that, of course, there are people who want to protest. Now, I don't necessarily have an issue if you want to protest, and I don't necessarily have an issue if you don't get permission and you're willing to make a statement understanding that the law still has to do what the law has to do. Because I did say, look, if you applied for permission and they said no, you could go ahead any day and make a statement. You just need to be prepared to face consequences. I did say that earlier. People might forget. Yeah. I want to reinstate that. Because it's not just about this situation that the police has to be concerned about. And a lot of people assume, they want to cover their you-know-whats and prevent the protests. But they're actually technically, for the wider police service, more practical and wider considerations that they can't just ignore.
Right. So, yeah, Sean. So the issue is about persons protesting during an SOE. Of course, under usual and normal circumstances, you would get a permit, you would get permission from the commissioner, you would send them an email and whatnot, and you get the permission to protest. However, during an SOE, it's absolutely prohibited. And the police service, now we have a lot of duties and functions. As you can see, when you look at the amount of exercises that the police are carrying out during this SOE, so you're seeing firearms being confiscated, you're seeing ammunition, you're seeing a lot of drugs being confiscated. There are a lot of exercises ongoing in the field throughout Trinidad and Tobago. So you recently saw where you have officers deployed to Sangran. You know, these are not just Eastern Division police officers. These are officers that are collated from across the country and sent on exercises throughout the country. So we have a lot of overtime that we have to account for. We have a lot of officers that need to come out, and they are dispatched to address crime throughout the country. So you're seeing persons being arrested for gang activity and whatnot, and then you have protests taking place. So we don't want officers' time and attention being taken away to address. Now, we have no problem with people protesting. So there's a lot of social media and media that could cover protests, especially if you want to stand in your yard and speak about something in a private setting. But when it comes to the public domain, we have to be very careful. Now, yesterday, you would have seen a protest taking place in front of Airlink. We have no problems with persons protesting against the TTPS. It's normal. It's a regular part of society. We encourage persons to speak out their mind. However, due to the SOE, we would have taken these officers off the field, including guard and emergency branch officers, who are normally assigned to tactical and exercises, to come now to police admin to address the situation. And of course, we have to take that into consideration. So we'd have left our other duties undone and come here. And the thing is that within the prohibition, you can be arrested. So you can be arrested immediately for having a protest if you are called on to disperse. Now, using this, now, as I said, the police service has no issue with persons protesting. However, during the SOE is prohibited. We would call, our protocol is to call on you to disperse, and if you refuse to disperse, we would take you into custody. It's an arrestable offense, meaning the penalty is at least, it carries a penalty of 5 years on the first conviction, if it reaches that far. So that's what an arrestable offense is considered. So the fine is $100,000, that's a maximum fine of $100,000, and I believe the maximum penalty is 5 years in prison. So the police officers have the authority to arrest you and take you into custody and charge you for the prohibition. And of course, we don't want that. So yesterday you saw that we listened for some time. We looked at the situation. We asked you to disperse, and the persons who were there, they eventually dispersed peacefully. However, it was not of a great safety concern at that time. However, in the future, it may be. So if you decide to protest on a particular location, a prohibited or restricted location, and you are called upon to disperse immediately and you don't, you would be arrested and taken into custody. Yeah. And that, it depends on the location, may cause some safety concerns and a hazard to the members of the public. So imagine you're on Independence Square, for instance, this is an example, you're on Independence Square protesting, and you feel you have the right to protest, no problem. The police come and they ask you to disperse. However, it's causing major traffic disruptions. You're taking away the police from doing their normal duties during an SOE, and then they have to come there to that location to arrest persons, charge persons. It takes a few hours to process persons and whatnot, and it causes a great disturbance to society. We must treat it as it is. There's a state of emergency. We must all behave within the limits of the state of emergency, albeit that persons feel aggrieved and they want to protest. We understand that. If you have, there's social media, there's media, you can have a statement made, you can have a conference, a media conference, and you get your message across. You could go on social media for the entire 24 hours and say what you want to say and get that out. Nothing is wrong with it. In the private settings of your home, your yard, and somewhere private. That's not a problem. And you could have persons, and there's a maximum, and protests, even with a private setting, you have to limit the amount of persons there. Because again, if it causes disruption to members of the public, if it's considered a hazard to safety, you will be called upon to disperse, and you could be arrested.
Well, also, you mentioned something else as well. This situation, I think, understandably would seem justifiable to the public because, A, we have an issue with the police. We are protesting the police. So this whole thing about we can't protest the police seems very convenient against the thing that we're trying to protest. And it might seem justifiable to the public, but the point is the police also has to be concerned that, look, if we allow this protest, do we allow other protests?
Yeah, so we have to issue the protest against police. It's protest on a whole. So whether you protest against the police, the government, the opposition, a private entity, you know, you didn't get 2 pieces of chicken instead of 1, whatever. You got 1 instead of 2. Whatever is the protest, we have to act in relation to the SOE, and you would be asked to disperse.
And I think this whole situation is, people need to understand, look, I don't have a problem if you understand what the law is and what the police duties are, and you go into the situation with both eyes open. If a police officer decides, because you're saying any senior police officer could decide to take action, right? If they decide we need to arrest somebody, you can't blame the officer in that situation. You can't blame the
officer, because he will be acting on his discretion, his assessment of the situation, his authority, and the powers that he has at that time, which is under the state of emergency. So he wouldn't be held culpable for his actions. Now, you can take private actions later on against the state. However, the officer will be acting within his power and his authority to take persons into custody, to quell the disturbance, to quell the situation, to free up the location and avoid any hazard to safety to members of the public.
And I think it was actually good, as much as you could argue that it might not have been the best message in terms of law and order and trying to enforce all the rules, that the protest yesterday was allowed to go on in whatever capacity it did, to kind of try to alleviate some of the pressure and to kind of show, well, look, it's not that we just want to silence people, but you need to understand that this is technically, it's not even necessarily just, you know, completely up to us. There are practical considerations. We might have to pull this out of the back pocket, right? One of the things is the reason why I think people need to understand, because you've seen with regards to civilian interaction with police in multiple jurisdictions, when you feel justified, you feel like, well, what do you mean you're arresting me? And there's a certain amount of entitlement, and that entitlement could then turn into physical resistance. Physical resistance could escalate the situation. Then all of a sudden, we're not talking about the situation you're supposed to be protesting about. We're talking about, look, they're arresting me, and that's a whole next kettle of fish, which I'll be honest, I just don't need the more drama. This situation is drama enough. More calm is technically what's needed, but unfortunately, you know, circumstances are making it difficult to get there, and more drama is not what's needed. So, because one of our callers called in and he pointed out, technically speaking, the police not doing anything about it, and especially now, it's a week, now the next 5 days are weekdays, there's more traffic on the roads, people have to go about their business, there's potential for more disruption. If the police does nothing, it kind of also, like, if you do something, it does send a bad message in the eyes of some people. If you do nothing, it also sends a bad message.
Yeah, of course. And of course, I must indicate and warn members of the public that any further action would cause the police to come in and call on the protesters to disperse. And if they fail to do that, we will have no other choice but to take them into custody. So what we are saying, let's avoid that situation. We understand members of the public feel entitled and justified and within their constitutional right to protest. I just want to remind persons that these rights have been suspended during the state of an emergency. Officers can actually search you, search your vehicle, search your home without a warrant. They can stop you without reasonable cause. So under normal circumstances, police officers must have reasonable and probable cause to search you. In a state of emergency, they don't have to. In a state of emergency, they don't have to have reasonable probable cause to stop you, arrest you, and take you into custody. There is a lot of resistance and hesitation on the part of police officers to do so, because we know the situation. We understand our portfolio. We understand members of the public feel disgruntled and want to speak out. We understand. And we give you all the opportunity. So yesterday was an opportunity that you would not get in the future, just like that, once it causes harm or hazard to public safety. So it's our warning. Let's hope that they take it into consideration. And let's hope that it doesn't erupt into something unnecessary. So please utilize your private spaces to make your public statements.
Well, that you mentioned searching vehicles, and obviously searching homes is not as pertinent in the moment in this situation, but searching persons and their vehicles.
The powers they have right now, the officers.
Right. No, but this is the thing, because I think a lot of people will say, well, we are here for peaceful protests.
Yeah.
So that automatically means that you can't suspect us of anything. But peaceful doesn't necessarily mean, like, aggressive behavior doesn't necessarily mean violence, right? You can still be aggressive and belligerent and what have you. And also for the police, you're not just going to automatically assume, it's a peaceful protest, you know, like nothing bad could happen. Because the sad part is, a peaceful protest could be hijacked for people with bad intentions, for people with other agendas.
Right, so the officers at the scene would use their discretion. So like, you had a peaceful walk in Tobago, I believe yesterday, or day before. It may have been Saturday. I'm not too accurate with the date. And, you know, there was a peaceful walk. Persons went about their business. They caused no harm. They caused no disruption to free flow of traffic, to pedestrians, to business. There was no great threat towards any member of the public or to anybody in particular. And it was allowed to happen. So the officers on the scene use their discretion. And I'm just saying that in the future, if it causes any harm, hazard to members of the public, or any disruption to the free flow of traffic and whatnot, then we would call on you to disperse. So as I said, I use the example of Independence Square. I'm not too sure where the protest may take place. However, any in the future may take place. But in this case, based on the discretionary officers, because of the location, you may have the officers calling them to disperse. And then if they refuse to do so, they'll have them arrested because they have the power and authority to do so. It's not something we want to practice, but if it's absolutely necessary, it will be done.
And here's the thing, because yes, in a practical sense, I can't say, look, if you want the best chance to be able to have the most time, don't block traffic, don't disrupt pedestrians, don't disrupt people's businesses, don't disrupt the government offices. I understand the thing about a protest, people look at all of these climate activists and this activists and it's like, no, we must disrupt, and it's like, no, there's a state of emergency. You don't have no, and even without it, you don't really have a right to disrupt, arguably, right? You don't know who there might be someone with a health condition trying to get to the hospital and whatnot. But with that said, so if you don't do these things and you are as responsible as possible, you might be able to have some time. You're not entitled to it. And I think this is the point that's very important.
The officers, as I said, would use their discretion. So they may allow some form of the protest to take place. They may allow persons to speak. But understand at any point in time, the senior officer may call on the protest to disperse at his discretion, his or her discretion. And if you fail to do that, he could employ the services of the other officers present to take you into custody. So it's not a situation that you want to be in if it gets bad or it gets to that point. So you want to avoid it on a whole because you don't know. As you say, somebody might hijack the protest. Somebody might call on, hey, we're not moving from here. We're not doing this, and we're not allowing nobody to pass. So imagine you're having a protest in front of a building and you're not allowing person to come out. That in itself is an offense, right? So your intention with the protest is not to do that. To be honest, the persons having protests tend to be very peaceful. But there are persons who always who are contrary to the protest, the intentions of the protest. So if somebody might stand in front of an officer or stand in front of some member of the building who works in a building, who is a customer to the premises, and they stop the person from leaving or entering, you have committed a what they call I want to use the word false imprisonment to some extent.
Right.
Right. So you'll be liable to an arrest or charges for that offense. So you have to be very careful how you cause the effect, the free flow of the passageway of the coming and going of persons in a building, a home, or whatever, or even on a street. So you have to be very careful with that.
You are not entitled to discretion.
You're not entitled to do it.
And I think for a lot of situations, people are like, oh gosh, but you can give me a warning, you didn't give me a warning. It's like, you're not entitled. I mean, whether it's road traffic stuff or whatever, you're not entitled to discretion. It can be exercised.
It can be exercised.
And the argument why it technically should not, and again, one of our callers pointed out, this is technically an example of the breakdown of the rules of the law and order that governs the situation.
Yeah.
All right, fine, one can make a case of the circumstances or what have you, but when you make exceptions for this, you could potentially make exceptions for other areas. These protesters might be peaceful. Other people protesting this issue might not be peaceful. Other people protesting other issues might not be peaceful. And peaceful is subjective. Peaceful
it's subjective.
It's not limited to we don't have guns and we didn't shoot anybody.
Yeah. So you made a point that a person might feel entitled to a warning. The warning doesn't have to be personalized. So imagine a senior officer, he says, listen, everybody needs to disperse. He says that. You didn't hear that. You are not entitled to a separate and an individual warning. You're not entitled to that. He gave that warning already. He would have said something. He would have tried to disperse the crowd. He would have said, listen, you all need to disperse. That's basically a warning. And most likely, and the protocol of the TTPS is to ask members of the public to peacefully disperse. Right? And you may not have heard that plea. You may not have heard that instruction. Do not feel that you're entitled to an individual warning and argue with the officer. Well, I didn't hear you. You didn't tell me anything. No, that will be mitigated in a court of law. So you would still be entitled to be arrested and taken before the court. Right? And you spoke about other jurisdictions. In other jurisdictions, persons make up their mind to get arrested.
Yes.
Why is they protesting?
Yes.
In Trinidad, they don't.
I mean, not all of them, but I think, yes, the actual serious
protesters
who they're not just there for the fame, and they're not just there for the emotional
they're there
high.
For the cause.
They're there for the cause. They're true believers. Like it's because when they're arrested, they don't kick and fight and
they take the arrest and they go before the court and they challenge the court, they challenge the arrest, they challenge the matter, whatever they do. They have lawyers set aside for that.
Because I think people don't fully appreciate potentially. Not everybody might fully appreciate when we're trying to talk about and you're mentioning different aspects of, listen, you know, the security concerns. Yes, you say you're being peaceful. Yes, the core group that started this protest is being peaceful, right? But especially when you have a highly emotionally charged topic. You don't know if some random newcomer's emotions are running high, right? He might be technically well-intentioned, but his methods are all wrong. He might be looking to pick a fight. He's so upset. He might think, oh, the line must be drawn here. Violence against us, we get to fight back to defend ourselves against the oppressor or what have you. It's like, and the thing is, when you try, the trick with a protest is, it's not as though protest organizers have 100% authority over everything that everybody in the protest does. It could go into chaos very easily if you're not careful, right?
Yeah, correct, yeah. And we've seen that historically and traditionally, you know, persons tend to protest police actions in Trinidad and Tobago since as early as in the colonial days. And so we've always had that relationship with members of the public to allow them to protest. And, we looked and we've seen their behavior, we observed their behavior. And, in the older days, it tended to reach into clashes. And it erupted. And police took action and persons would have died, and unfortunately. And you see a difference now with protests where police tend to allow persons to protest, allow persons to be as peaceful as possible. It does have the potential to get worse, and we don't want it to erupt, especially during our SOE, when we are challenged with everything else. We have all sorts of offenses and crime that we are taking, that we have to consider. We have other duties to consider. We have other duties. I saw that the government recognized the shortfall at the TTPS, and they're attempting to bring it up to the correct mark. To bring it up to the correct. Hello?
Yes. There was a little slow.
Yeah, I got a call there.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. And they're trying to make amends to bring it up to the correct strength, which is applaudable. But until then, we have a number of things that we need to consider and a lot of work that we have to take into consideration so that we don't bring disruption throughout Trinidad and Tobago. So this protest might seem isolated, but again, we have to take officers from all over and bring them to this location to tend to this situation. And the simplest solution, outside of asking persons to disperse, and hopefully they peacefully do that, is to take them into custody and address the situation.
Because ironically, you need the bodies, depending on the situation, to keep control. It's not as though, well, we could just pull out our firearms and take control that way.
No.
You can't do that in a situation like this. Unless someone starts shooting, the firearms have to stay in the holster. You need officers to not necessarily manhandle people out of the way, but to kind of, one officer to a group of 200 protesters ain't going to get into this space.
No. And what you would have seen yesterday, you would have seen rapid response officers. I don't know what they call them now. 999. I don't know what they call them now. 999, rapid response, ERP.
But these are the officers to respond to emergencies, basically.
Right, and you had them there with the heavy arm because they are doing patrols and responding to emergencies in uniform. So you'd have seen uniform officers with heavy arms across their chests at a protest, right? And this is something we try to avoid when it comes to protests. We generally don't, the officers with the heavy arms like GB and the response officers, they tend to be on the outskirts.
Yeah.
However, we had to have them there because of we didn't get the strength we needed to come in quickly.
Yeah.
The handgun officers, then the ones with just the pistol. So we had to bring in officers from ERP and GB and IATF and whatnot who were on duty at the time at the other locations with heavy arms. So then you see heavy arm officers at the location, and people were like, why they had to come here with a big gun. But these officers were somewhere else tending to serious reports.
And
they respond with heavy arms to these reports, and they just happened to come here. Now they were called into the situation. So they had to leave where they were, where they normally tend to respond to reports and in high-risk areas, to come to this location now to address this protest. So
and it's not as though they could leave the artillery in the car, right?
No, they can't do that. No,
yeah.
They can't do that.
No.
And they wouldn't go back to base to drop it off to come back, come out.
These were who were available, and they were out in the field already. And they needed bodies to just, have a presence. Part of it is, and I think people need to appreciate this, it's also about the safety of the technically protesters as well. It's the safety of the general public in the area. But also these protesters as well. Like, again, all it takes is one idiot to light a match. And then you might have comments on your hands that could cause people to get hurt. One thing though, and this is something I also think the public needs to understand, you're not entitled to discretion, but also if one protest goes bad,
yeah, that's it.
There's no follow-on opportunity to try and be better in the current circumstances. It's already pushing the boundaries of what the police could allow, of what the rules permit, right? So this is one of those things where don't. Now is not the time to test boundaries and see how far you could go and what you can get away with.
Yeah, and I think it could be better utilized. Social media could be better utilized to bring about your point. I mean, there's nobody who's not on social media. So you have everybody on social media, and the oldest person to the youngest person is on social media, and you could get your point across. So utilize those avenues to explore, to indicate your frustration, to voice your opinion. Use it. It's free. Once you don't threaten anybody, once you don't say anything that could cause any harm to members of the public, you know, you could freely indicate what you want on social media. I'm sure it will spread like a virus. It will spread all over the place. People would see it, people like it, people dislike it, people would indicate their support for it. And I think, you know, there's no need to really come out and interfere with members of the public and to cause any harm, to cause any disruption, to cause any resistance, to cause any problems to members of the public.
Now, I would encourage protesters to also reach out to the media. You know, it's not, the social media is the backbone. Social media is what's going to carry this thing.
Yeah.
But you could still get some amount of information distribution via traditional media, one interview on this morning show or that news show or what have you.
Course,
I'm not necessarily advocating for my show. I'm just saying in general, whoever you feel comfortable with, whatever platform you feel comfortable with, right? Yeah. Because part of it is maybe they think, oh, if we go on social media, who's going to watch? Listen, what you said there, I would be surprised if that's not the truth. And if it's just to get the start, well, do whatever it takes to get the start, because this is a way you don't have a lot of the security concerns with regards to social media engagement that you would in a physical protest. There's a time and place for everything. And one of the things is it's easier for the organizers to control a social media event than a real world event where things get physical. Now, I just want to say also, you're not entitled to the court treating with kids' gloves because you think this is a worthy cause and you shouldn't be. No, as Chris, as you pointed out, real activists understand the risks. Do you believe in the cause to face the risks? That's what it comes down to, right?
Yeah, correct.
And I would argue, Trinbagonians, we ain't built for that just yet. We too happy with the island life. But also, speaking about the island life, this is another thing I think people need to try to understand. As much as the narrative is what it is, and trust and confidence in the service is what it is, we've said this before, police officers come from society. Now, you could say that there are some bad apples, but you can't say that the majority of the police service comes from some mythical place that no one else lives, and they have no idea, all police officers have no idea what Joe Public is going through. It's not as though you don't have a family, you don't have family members, you don't have children and aunts and cousins and what have you, and uncles and siblings and whatnot. And I think people need to understand that not every officer, when they approach you, it's with some agenda, because they're single men or women that only care about advancing their career, and they're hermits that are cut off from the rest of society.
No. And the officers are trained, so when you go through the period of training, you're trained to behave and operate in a particular manner. Without going into that particular incident, officers are trained on how to respond, and things happen. Whatever happened will be divulged in the court. So we can't come out and indicate, well, look, this is the evidence. There's a procedure for disclosing evidence.
No, but I was speaking more to the fact that, look, officers are aware, and somewhat, it's not as though that they don't appreciate at times what the public is going through. It's
of
just
course,
that
no, we
it's
understand.
not,
we have family.
Right. It's just that, look, you all technically have procedures, rules, laws. You know, there's this very inconvenient thing called laws, which you all technically are not supposed to decide when it applies and when it doesn't apply solely on your own judgment. There's discretion, but that has its limitations.
Yeah, we understand fully that persons are aggrieved, persons are aggravated, persons want to get their voice heard, persons don't understand. I think this situation calls for a lot more education because, you know, when you look at this scenario, Sean, when you look at not that scenario, but other scenarios, we've seen officers in a shooting in Mova being charged. We've seen officers in Moruga being charged. Because, and these instructions were given by the same office that have now given certain instructions or advice. So to say that, you know, when you try to relate it, it's basically almost the same situations, and persons, officers were charged. In this case, that hasn't happened. And without going into it, is it that the office that does this and gives the advice, were they correct in other cases, but not correct in this one? So, you know, we understand that a lot of education needs to take place. And a lot of educating members of the public needs to take place. Again, officers can't disclose anything because of the situation. There is a court matter now. And there are rules of disclosure. The same way there are rules of engagement with victims and suspects who are treated totally differently. There are rules of engagement with respect to how we disclose material to anybody, because only the court can order the disclosure. So we can't come out and say, well, look, this is the evidence we have, and this is the evidence we don't have, and this was said, and this wasn't. We can't do that. We are legally bound by these rules of engagement. And we understand that not everybody in society would know that. And we understand there would be some lack of education, there would be some ignorance of these facts, and therefore persons feel that, listen, it's a cover-up. The police service is hiding things. It's not that. We have rules of engagement. The commissioner can't even come out and say what evidence they have unless a court orders it. So it is what it is, and we have to, and we understand. We have family, we have friends, we are also members of society. We hear their views and opinions. Sometimes we shouldn't, and we may voice our own opinions. But we understand, we totally understand. And hopefully it doesn't erupt into violent actions. It remains peaceful, but you have to understand that the officers are bound by law, especially in a state of emergency, and action would be taken if it does cause any harm to members of the public and their safety.
That's another situation that I think we kind of have to acknowledge, and you've spoken about it before. You didn't necessarily connect the 2 points together, but there's, well, or maybe you did, but to go back to it, manpower shortage and the fact that the protest needs a certain amount of manpower.
Yeah.
And it's not as though every police officer could work every shift.
No.
Morning, evening,
you know
morning, afternoon, and night, right? Yeah. And listen, during COVID, after COVID, and now, officers with health issues.
Yeah.
Right? We won't get into it. You're in that category of you probably should not be working Saturday and Sunday nights.
Yeah.
You know, 7 days a week into the night, but you know. But the fact is, we are in a state of emergency, and I wonder if part of the reason the public now has a hard time accepting this situation. First of all, there was a similar scenario with the candlelight vigil movement, which was not against the police, but because of COVID and the state of emergency and the public health ordinances, Commissioner Griffith had to shut that down. And to my disappointment, it seemed as though we just forgot how to protest anything after that point. I think maybe Labour had one protest. I can't remember what the issue. And then, like, as a nation, for years, we just like, protest, what's that? We don't know what that is. We forgot what that is. And I don't necessarily want the public to go back into that mode, but at the same time, we are technically in a state of emergency. There was technically a high murder rate before the state of emergency. Right? You could debate the politics behind the state of emergency all you want, but I feel as though the public kind of takes it for granted. Because it's almost like if, forgive me for saying this while you're here, this does not reflect the opinions of ASP Arun. But the politicians basically made the state of emergency kind of look as though, well, it's only against the criminals. No curfew. You, Joe Public, you're fine. Don't worry about it. You don't even have to think about a state of emergency. You know, as long as you obey the law, this is not meant for you. But the fact of the matter is, it's still there. And this is one area where we need to understand not only is it rules against protesting, but also the police just don't have the spare manpower to be like, oh, they want to protest, fine. And we could facilitate every and any request for that, because I guess one of the other things is I won't be surprised if Labour has issues, they might want to protest. What do you do if two people want to protest on the same day during a state of emergency when you're supposed to have exercises going on? I mean, I guess all of that is part of the consideration, because you know there's part of the public that don't want to hear the commissioner said no. So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah. One thing I must say, Sean, from my observations, from my experience, from what I am seeing on the ground, as I'm out there, and for now I'm in the media, and I hear complaints, and I hear you didn't see, or you don't see, and it's very positive for the TTPS. You didn't see police officers taking advantage of their authority during the SOE. If you heard any at all, I didn't hear any complaints at all of victimization, like, you know, you're running in somebody's house without a warrant or whatnot. But you hardly heard, I haven't heard any cries of victimization outside this incident. You don't hear officers on the ground taking advantage of their authority. Maybe it didn't reach my ears, maybe it reached yours, I don't know. But, you know, in terms of stopping vehicles, in terms of searching persons, in terms of going into persons' homes and premises and whatnot, you've hardly heard any complaints of that nature. And to me, it's a positive for the TTPS, who have the authority and the laws on their side to do what they want to do, and they haven't done that. So I don't know, maybe outside this isolated incident, I haven't really heard members of the public stating that, you know, police officers taking advantage, you know, the pushing, the fighting, the beating and whatnot.
Yeah.
You haven't really heard cries of victimization.
I think whatever we have heard, there hasn't been any increase. And that suggests very much what you're saying, that there's no advantage taken of the state of emergency. Whatever there might have been, that's more or less what's there, right? For better or worse, it is within the normal range, and of course that's also subjective, right? Now, of course, the PCA, they might say differently, but then again, we haven't had major incidents where the public has had the outcry of this. You're correct. And I think people do need to, on some level, appreciate that. It's not about, oh, you know, you gotta I don't know, forgive or be biased. It's look, appreciate the good, right? To be fair, you still have license to criticize what you think is bad if you genuinely think it's bad, right? But appreciate the good as well, because you want to encourage the good. This is something that should be acknowledged. So, hey, just keep doing that. We acknowledge that, keep doing that. Don't think we are ignoring it. We have a couple comments before the end of the show. Let's take them. It speaks to the topic generally. Good day. It has been known in the past that so-called evidence has been planted or have been planted on a victim subsequent to an illegal act perpetrated by the police. This may or may not be the case with Ms. Seeley, but I believe it cannot be ruled out. Okay, technically this possibility will always exist regardless of who, what the history is. We know that it can happen. It has happened, even if it hasn't happened here, it has happened elsewhere. So it technically can't happen here. I understand that. There comes a point where speculation, you have to be careful with the what ifs. Yes, you acknowledge the possibility. So in trial, a proper defense will consider the possibility and what could be shown with regards to the possibility. For public speculation, I don't know. Here's the problem, Chris. I can't necessarily tell people not to speculate in this direction on this topic.
No, we have no problem. We have no problems with person speculating.
Yeah.
You know, it is what you have video footage showing something, but you know, and persons would speculate. We understand persons. We have no problem with persons speculating.
Yes, Chris, the one issue where I will disagree with you on what could not have been revealed to the public, because we've seen this before.
Yeah.
Someone is involved in a potential shooting or was shot by the police and they allegedly had a gun.
Yeah.
We would see the gun. A gun was, or they would at least mention a gun was recovered at the scene.
Yeah.
But like literally, this is one of the few times where allegations of shooting at the police was made, but no mention, photo, nothing of the firearm. And the commissioner at his press conference even said, they take the photos of the guns we confiscate and they put their own watermark on it. It's like, yes, because you normally show these things. In this case, it didn't happen. People are going to question that. I question that. Because now saying there's a gun now, it kind of, I think I can understand for that alone, the comment because of that. Saying, you know, because I guess the assumption for some people would be there was no gun, the gun was planted.
Right. And what would happen, Sean, in court, right?
Yes.
That would be taken into consideration.
Right.
So yeah, so that would be a defense. So the defense attorney would raise that issue. So it's not to say, well, look, the person should not be charged because they have a defense. No. A defense is explored in court. Any defense, even the defense, let's say, what they call assault. You're being attacked, and you use what they call it, defensive. You have to use self-defense. Even self-defense is mitigated in court if you are charged.
Right.
So the court has to consider the defense. So in any case, the police not presenting this evidence early as opposed to late, that will be considered in court. So everything is considered in court.
I mean, it doesn't help the court of public opinion, which...
Yeah, of course, yeah. No, we understand that. And one of the things I recognized in giving evidence recently, you remember the matter? There was a matter
you had a matter in court, yeah.
Right. And when I gave evidence, the line of the questions method by the defense attorney made me realize that although there were about 3 or 4 witnesses to that incident, the line of questioning he met out to me showed me I recognized that it was a totally different perspective.
Right.
That the evidence I was giving, was totally, not totally different, but from a totally different angle as opposed to the other witnesses, and it could have been construed as not being credible.
Right.
Because although I won the matter, right, I recognize Subaway. He's asking the questions from a different angle, a different perspective. And I recognize that the witnesses before may have said something in a different light from their perspective. So when you're looking at things from different perspectives, it may seem to be an issue, right? But it gets dealt with in the court. The court has to take that into consideration, that the evidence that Arun gave was from his perspective as opposed to the other witnesses' perspective. So all of that is considered in court, because I came out of that court thinking, well, wait, I could have been appeared to be as lying, when really and in truth and in fact, I was given it from my perspective. You know, the incident took place on a pavement. We had to consider the distance, but the distance I was the same distance as the other witness and whatnot. So the court has to explain that to the jury, and all of that would have been understood in the court. That would have been trashed out in the court, and the person was found guilty.
But I find it interesting because you basically said a defense is not exoneration, to paraphrase what you said earlier. And I also said a charge is not a conviction. Like the court has to go through the process. That's at the end of the day. I think one of the other things, to be fair, as much as I do think there was some leeway for the commissioner, well, maybe if you can't reveal nothing, you need to be a little bit more careful what you say, buddy. But anyway, one of the things that we also should acknowledge, to be fair, is it's not as though the defense of Ms. Seeley is all out there being spoken about in the public. They haven't had a press conference either and given all, I mean, yes, she's spoken to the public in the past, but on some level, we've reached the point now we've reached the point where I think you could say it's very understandable. Everybody's not going to say anything to the public, and it's going to have to play out in the courts.
It has to play out in the courts.
These charges goes
because
through.
I heard, I looked at a Facebook video from a commentator, and she indicated that Miss Seeley, that she gave her a statement, and it was made available to members of the public, and that she wasn't interviewed. But the thing on to interview somebody, they have to be available, and you have the right to refuse to be interviewed.
Right.
So that wasn't explained in that person's video. It said they find it funny that this lady wasn't interviewed. The thing is, as I said, interviews are voluntary. I can interview you how much, you could remain silent. I could put any question to you, you could remain silent. 1 and 2, you have to be available. So I'm not too even sure that wasn't explained in the video. And again, as I said, there's a lot of issues with educating members of the public that needs to be done. So, you know, those terms and those, so you can't just say, well, you know, somebody gave a statement. One, I don't even know if the police got the statement. Not because somebody gives a statement means the police has the statement. And then to interview somebody, they must be.
There's a formal process. You just speaking to the public is not a formal statement to the police.
No,
right?
it isn't.
Right.
Exactly. So, yeah, and it has to be tendered into evidence. So it is also considered when somebody gives a statement, whether they are interviewed or not, and again, it is their right to refuse to be interviewed, the state attorneys or the DPP would take that into consideration when looking at all the evidence.
And again, it's not like the DPP is just pronouncing her guilt. Now, with that said, we do have another comment to take. If we could say, malice may be proven also by showing that the prosecutor instituted a criminal case not for the purpose of vindicating justice or enforcing the criminal law, but to personal advantage to himself. Now, here's the thing, though. I do wonder if this situation or if this statement, it is, I do question it just on the basis of I don't see where the prosecutor has benefit, the DPP, for saying the charge, right? And I believe he would be the prosecutor in this situation, right?
Right. No, of course not. No. There's a state, the DPP is not necessarily the prosecutor.
Now, no, go ahead.
Yeah, and one of the rules of engagement and one of the rules of involvement with the state attorney's office is that they would have to look at the prima facie evidence. So once there's prima facie evidence, there's no reasonable doubt. Once there's prima facie evidence without reasonable doubt. So, for instance, if I try to make a case out of you that you committed a robbery, but you could prove that you're in another jurisdiction during the robbery, that would cause reasonable doubt. And based on the reasonable doubt, the state attorney or the DPP would say, no, listen, you cannot charge. So in the absence of reasonable doubt and there's prima facie evidence, the state's, the DPP's office has no other choice but to institute charges. So it's not about public outcry and it's not about public opinion. It's not about that. There's rules of engagement. So I don't know the evidence. You don't know the evidence. So all of that would have been considered. And they have no other choice.
With this statement, I would have understood it more if it was trying to say, well, someone in the police service, the commissioner, or whichever investigator or the officers involved in the shooting, they initiated a criminal case, right? And somehow, you know, because then, look, she got charged, right? And one could make the case where in the court of public opinion, if she gets charged, that will reduce potentially the perception of the wrongdoing that people have of the officers, right? The father, Mr. Samru, now he has changed his opinion, which I think is actually good to see someone that's not necessarily wedded emotionally to an opinion, because of the potential implications of what the charges might mean. But with that said, it still needs to be proven in a court of law. But in the meantime, I understood the statement being as though, well, now that the charges are out there, right, it can cause reputational harm to Ms. Seeley, for better or worse. And I get that, but I just don't see where the prosecutor is the one that is going to benefit from this. The DPP was not involved in this situation.
There's no benefit to state attorney instituting charges, including DPP office, instituting charges against anybody. There's no benefit, there's no loss, there's no...
And as you said, we trust the DPP in other cases. All of a sudden, in this case...
He instituted charges against police officers in similar actions, in similar incidents, where there was video footage, and now, for whatever evidence is before them, they decided to do a different way. But as I said, there's rules of engagement. So there's a rule that says that if you have prima facie evidence in the absence of reasonable cause, because let's say for the sake of argument, the person gave a statement in their favor as a defense, and there was no reasonable cause established, reasonable doubt established, then the DPP has no other choice. He has no other choice but to institute charges.
Basically, there's reasonable suspicion. On some level, the DPP is saying, listen, there's enough evidence here, let the court handle it.
Yeah, and let the court deal with it, because it must be mitigated in the court, right? As I said, the commentator indicated that the person gave a statement of what distance that statement reached. I am not aware. However, all this would be mitigated in the court, because the person could use it in their own defense. They could use it. It could be used against them, right? And it has to be trashed out in the court. And I think that's the best place for it to be trashed out.
I think this case is testing how the public perceives, understands the whole concept of innocent until proven guilty. But also, and I think this is some of the thing that political leadership, police executives, they need to, if they didn't understand it before, they need to catch up real quick. What this commenter is saying, whether you agree or disagree with the technical aspects of what he's saying, he's basically pointing to, I don't trust the system here. That's what it says to me. And, you know, on some level, we can't assume that the entire police service is one grand conspiracy. How do we set up Miss Seeley to take the fall? Like, that is not what's going to happen. But the members of the public are going to view it as, well, the police is a gang, and it's a grand conspiracy, and they're out to get us. So whatever it is, and you can't just tell people that's not true and expect them to accept that and move on with their life. That's the challenge.
Sean, I understand how the public feels. I understand, and maybe it's just a percentage of the public, to be honest, but nonetheless, you have to take it at its face value. And members of the public are aggrieved. And we understand that it would lower the opinion of the perception of the police and the trust in the police. But you have to also understand, these are the same police officers that put their lives on the line throughout Trinidad and Tobago. They go out there, they arrest persons, they investigate crimes, they conduct exercises, they get killed in the line of duty, right? We've seen officers die on doing road works. We've seen officers die in the line of being shot at, right? I remember there was an officer, I believe his name was Maynard. He was shot when they had the prison break some years ago. Condolences to his family. So you have officers dying and risking their lives in the line of duty to safeguard members of the public. And I understand that one or two incidents may cause harm to our reputation, but there are a number of good officers on the ground. There are a number of good officers working out there that we don't give that kudos to. We don't, right? And we don't see it. But there are officers out there that do good work. I experience it every day. People tell me, thank you very much for assisting and whatnot and whatnot. I mean, it doesn't make it in the public media. I other than this, I don't be in the public, in the public media, that kind of thing. And I've contributed a lot to the fight against crime, right? There are a lot of officers who don't go into the public media and on the media. They do a lot of good. When I am on chats, Central, Northern, Eastern, I'm on a lot of police chats, and when you see the good work officers doing, I think the TTPS does a poor job of highlighting it. Ms. Archie indicates that it's on Facebook and whatnot, and TikTok and whatnot, and I think that it doesn't make it. And whether it does, but apparently whether it does or not, it does affect. There's still that stigma against, against the public perception and trust and confidence in the TTPS. However, I rest assured there are good officers. Sure, I've arrested police officers. I've charged police officers. And I'm not saying we've never come to the table and said our hands are clean. We've always said that once a police officer commits an offense, they will be investigated, they will be charged like any member of the public. And I think we've made that very clear. Although it is perceived that there are incidents of corruption and cover-up, believe me, the majority of times, the police service tries its best to address that by arresting and charging members of the police service. More than anybody else, more than prison officers, more than any other, more than other service members, more than other institutions, more than anybody else. We charge police officers more than anybody else. And that does say something. It's just that how we think culturally in Trinidad and Tobago, it affects our judgment and belief in the TTPS.
The problem is, and I get it, that the way how things are set up now, not everything could be revealed, but unfortunately, that's a contributing factor to the problem. Right? It contributes to a lack of transparency, regardless of whether it's a good reason or not. But then also, I think if you want to talk about police customer service, yes, that's an issue of the rank and file. Right? But if you want to talk about issues like this, which are high-end issues, controversial issues, the fact of the matter is the police still needs the help of the public. And
of course.
The public's willingness and trust in the police in order to help the police has dropped from last couple of weeks till now. And it's not necessarily rank and file to fix it. It's more about leadership, and some of it includes government level leadership, because I won't get into it, but while the game's being played in Parliament, we have real deficiencies and gaps. Maybe perhaps the lack of transparency in the police service, one of the big issues is what the law states has to happen. And I'm not saying that you need to give away all the evidence in every investigation to the public. That's a little too far. But the capacity to speak on some level of what's going on matters, because police social media is competing with all social media, and that is the world. That is the world, unfortunately. We're out of time. I want to thank the callers that called in earlier. I want to thank the commenters that sent in comments. We hear you. Here's the thing, and I guess to sum it up, Chris is saying the police hears you, and they're not saying no, right? But there's no quick fix on this. The only quick fix is making better decisions in the next election, whatever that may look like, which I don't know if there is a better decision to be made. I'm just saying, right? But the police, the rank and file, they're doing their best. Most of them stand with you as much as they can, because they are your brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, fathers and mothers. Let's not forget that. If it was easy and straightforward, then it wouldn't be real life. I know we're not a real place, but our problems are the problems of real life. Ugly, complicated, and difficult to solve. If it was easy to solve, then a caveman would do it, and we wouldn't have this problem in the first place. Chris, thanks for joining me once again. It is good to hear from you and see you in relative good health.
Thanks.
I hope you get the long-term solution soon. I know, but it's been for like months now. You know, you're scaring me, buddy. Yes,
No,
sir.
it's a process.
Okay, all right, folks. Yeah. This is Talking About the WSN. We've been way over time, but of course, this is a pressing issue. Again, thanks for all the engagement and Chris joining us. Remember, stay safe. Remember your allegiance to this republic and to each other, and each other includes, listen, you're going to interact with police officers. I just had a minor interaction just this Sunday. Nothing bad, you know, it was just a thing. A pedestrian didn't see a police car moving off, and I tried to indicate, and, you know, just normal human interaction, because at the end of the day, police officers are normal humans too. They are citizens of this country too. Have your complaints and your suspicions. Act upon them responsibly. Never forget it's nice to be nice. We want to see each other tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN